Welcome to the HR Morning Show. I love that first segment because I always get cut off on that first section. It's my favorite. But this is the number one spot for everything HR all morning long. So let us know who's out there. It's live. I'm live. I've got a great co-host with me. We're missing one co-host today, which I'm a little bit down about. We heard his voice, AP, who is in the chat as well, said, I'll be
He is
back
in
on
the
the show
chat.
next week. Yeah, he's still trolling us somehow. He's off the grid, but on the grid. But we're a part of Purple Acorn, and that's it's an online community for HR professionals, decision makers, tech savvy individuals, and entrepreneurs interested in the latest HR news and updates. Again, we want to know who's out there, so say hi to us if you're out there. And if you want to find out more about Purple Acorn, you can go to purpleacorn.io. And please give us a follow on LinkedIn as well. I think we got like 200 followers?
Yeah,
So
like 200.
only
Getting up there.
199,000 away from my follower account, but we'll get there. And then
We can't
new.
all be so lucky, Joel.
It's all right. I'm selling followers now, so you guys, I'll talk to the production team. You guys can buy some,
That's great.
but you can also find us on Spotify and iTunes now, which is new. So this is exciting. But like I said, we're one person short here, Adam. So I'm assuming he is back in Vermont. The bear got to him again. If you guys remember, Adam
Yeah,
likes to just go off the grid every week. But
that graphic was pretty crazy. I
where's
was
the
a little
graphic?
afraid.
Well, where
I
is
don't
it?
know. I don't know. It's a few weeks back. People gotta go search for it. But I think that we have a lot of luck right here in this little pod.
That's right.
After that video before, I think I should be going to Vegas at this point and betting all my money at the tables. 60% was the correct answer on your poll last week. So
Yeah, but you went
very proud.
over, so you lost it all. I mean,
Okay,
that
good.
was.
We don't need to get that technical.
I love too how like Adam will randomly be like, "Hey, we should do this for next week. We should do this for next week," and then he doesn't even show
And then
up
he
for
doesn't
next
show up.
week.
He's
So,
not that invested, obviously.
well, I'm excited for this week's show. We've got a lot lined up. I want to see though. I want to share one of my relatable videos here. That's not done by me, but a good friend of mine. Why don't we cue the video? And I'm sure all you recruiters will relate to this.
Hello? Yes, hi. How'd that
Hi,
interview go today with the candidate? Perfectly. They are super qualified.
it's good
Love
news.
that. What aligned? Everything aligned. Nice. Let me go ahead and get that offer letter drafted. I'm sorry? You want to see more candidates?
Perfect.
4 more candidates?
Reminds
By
me
the
Wow.
of
end of
dating.
the week. Listen, don't you have that conference that you're going to be traveling for Tuesday through Friday? You do? Okay. Oh, you have someone random who's never been on any of our rec qualification calls before, just going to jump into the interview process.
Smart.
Love that. Okay, and if we lose this perfect current candidate? Okay, so then it just wasn't meant to be. Okay, love that.
I mean, come on. Every recruiter has dealt with that interviewer. We know someone. And in fact, if you can, tag an interviewer you know who's just like that because
Yeah, word.
it's the most annoying thing. Danielle, have you ever gone through an interview like that or worked with any hiring managers like that?
100%. Yeah. That girl looked like she was gonna cry. So I feel like I want to hug her. But yeah, no, I've definitely been through interviews like that, and I think the worst part as a candidate is they never tell you why. They never tell you why,
Why do you
and
think
that's
that? Why do you think it is?
it's a liability, obviously,
Big liability. Well,
but
that's
it's
I just
unfortunate.
posted about that today too. I'm like, if because I think somebody on Threads is like, why don't companies ever give feedback? I'm like,
Yeah,
because if they really did, you would be suing them, no doubt. But
yeah,
then too, like right now, I the only time I've ever seen companies move quick was during the Great Resignation, which is why I want the Great Resignation to come back. But outside of that, this is what it's like: you deliver the perfect candidate, everything looks good, and then they want to see 4 more comparisons, and especially in this
yeah.
market, we are seeing an uptick of that, which
I
is
mean, we'll see in November. I think the election will change a lot in terms of the economy. It depends obviously on who's elected, but I think we don't know yet what it'll look like, and therefore we don't know what the job market will look like. And right now, it's definitely an employer led market. I'm sure you would agree, but you never know. Things can change like that, and I think that's important for employers to really realize and keep in mind.
Yeah, 100%. Well, talking about, well, we're not even talking about it, but what are you up to in the next couple months? You going to any conferences?
Yeah.
I'm very excited to hear where you're going to be out and about.
So my plans are still a little bit up in the air. I'm gonna be possibly going somewhere in the US for a month in October, for a potential contract for something, and I
Okay.
can't share about it yet. It's not set in stone. Don't want to jinx it. So that possibly going to RecFest, we're not really sure. I posted on LinkedIn though last week, and I was like, I wish there was an app or something that tells you who's going to what conference.
There it is. Where are all the developers out there? We need
Yeah,
that. The HR
seriously.
finders or like HR. That'd be a great idea.
Like,
I think
why
that
is
would be
that not a
amazing.
thing?
Only reason I could see it not being a thing is because, maybe you just get some creeper that just follows you around at every conference
Oh
and you're
my
like,
God.
not you again. That would be the only reason. Other than that, it's a great. Let us know in the chat, who are you, what conferences are you going to?
Yeah,
I would love to know what you're going to. I'm going to be going to RecFest. I am hosting a stage. I believe it's the Unplugged stage, which I am
nice.
super excited about. Yeah, I'm gonna just
Unplugged is such a cool name for a stage.
Unplugged. It's what they're gonna be doing on my mic like an hour in, after I just make fun of every hiring manager there. But on a serious note, I'm excited to be there. I know so many amazing TA people are gonna be out there. I know a lot of people in my network are gonna be out there. So let me know in the chat if you are gonna be out there. Would love to meet up. I'm gonna be hosting a stage. I'm gonna be doing some live podcasting.
Heck
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and then probably just interviewing random people.
Love that.
I always love to do that. So
Content, content, content. I think if you're not going to a conference with a content plan, you're doing it wrong.
yeah, you're messing up big time if you are
Yeah,
not doing that. I mean, to me, it's the biggest thing that I found with conferences is it's actually where it like activates your online presence. So it's like
for
I think
sure.
a lot of people have built big online followings over the last couple of years, but it isn't really until you get out there and you meet people face to face, it almost like activates everything you're doing online as well. And then,
Yeah.
like you say, you can get content. So we got RecFest, and then maybe gonna squeeze in HR Tech. So I don't
Okay.
know. I might be
Bold.
there. Are you gonna go to HR Tech? We got to get you to HR Tech.
Everything's up in the air. I'm open. I'm talking to a few brands. We'll see what happens. Not getting my hopes up. I'm kind of like fine with having a more chill September. Conferences really wipe me out, which is what I've noticed. But they definitely do a lot for business, so maybe worth the investment. Yeah, but I would be curious also for anyone in the comments, which conferences do you think are worth going to?
Oh, that is a good one. Well, we got LinkedIn user. I don't even know who that is. Why don't if if you just said RecFest, let me know who that is because you've got privacy settings on LinkedIn, so we can't see
Yeah.
who you are. But so we got one for RecFest. I would love to know where the people are going to be at as well. And I'm just excited to meet people again. I went to RecFest last year. It was fun. I think this year it's going to be bigger and better. And then HR Tech, I've never been, so who knows? And so
Wow.
but if you want to see Danielle, I say if you're a brand out there, you want Danielle to rep your brand, let's make that happen. So
Let's do it.
reach out to Danielle on that one. What else? What else you got going on? Anything fun, like even non-work related? You got anything fun over the next? Any
It's
trips
my dad's
planned?
birthday this next week, but we're having a party this weekend for him, which is lovely. Um,
Do you guys just have
and
birthdays every month in your family, or what?
yeah, I actually have a family member that was born every single month of the year, so I get to keep celebrating birthdays.
I love it.
Never get off the birthday train. What about you? Any fun plans?
My birthday's in 5 days, guys. Let's go. I'm
Oh,
like 30 something. It's
we
gonna
need
be
Adam
sick.
for the button.
Bow, bow, bow. Hey, by the way, I guess LinkedIn user is my mom, Heather Colvin. So thanks, mom. Great to have you there. It's not really my mom, but
Thanks, Heather.
Yeah, just, you can update that by your privacy settings. I'm not gonna get into it right now.
This
Um,
isn't, yeah, you're not Clark. Come on.
Clark will be making an appearance later on. I'm always excited for his segment.
It's
Well,
it's gas.
I want to give a special shout out to the one and only ERIN. ERIN makes this show possible. If you guys don't know ERIN, I mean, you get cool T-shirts. We got sloths that my
Oh,
kids
so
they
cute.
wanted to. My daughter mentioned it. She's like, "I see that sloth on your desk, and I'm going to be taking it." But if you don't know ERIN, ERIN is the premier employee referral and internal mobility software platform. It increases employee referral hires for non-desk and corporate employees by 5 times and decreases turnover by 50%. I always say your best recruiters are your current employees. And so ERIN makes it super easy to do. You can check out ERIN 5.0. It's got some new features designed to make this kind of referral job process instantaneous. You could submit referrals. It's as easy as sending a text, a chat, or Slack. So they're making it easy, and it delivers success metrics as well. So you can really run on world-class employee referrals, which is huge, guys. Like I said, your best employees or your best recruiters are your employees that are happy, that telling people
The
about what you do.
influencers.
They're internal influencers. I really think that should be a thing. So if you want a sloth too, you can get a sloth. Literally, just chat right now, sloth, and we will get a chat. Or you can go to purpleacorn.io as well, and you can request one of these sloths. I'm telling you, the
So
kids
cute.
love them. Where's your sloth? You got your sloth with you?
I don't travel with my sloth right
Oh,
now. I'm at my parents' home in
well,
in Connecticut.
they need a sloth.
Unfortunately,
They
I
need a
don't have
sloth
it to
bad.
cuddle with.
Nah, it's okay. Well, why don't we cue the commercial here, and we will be right back. Woo!
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
HR headlines. Let's go. You
What
pumped?
an intro. I can't believe Adam's missing this.
It's all right. He's jamming with his sloth off grid. Well, we got some big news as always. Danielle, I'm curious on this one. Have you heard the term new collar worker? What is this new collar worker about?
Yeah, so I hadn't heard of it until I came across this article. But essentially, it is describing something I've spoken about actually on the news before, about how people are just graduating into the workforce from out of high school and just landing these crazy, high-paying jobs at big companies, and it's really fulfilling a need for these organizations, like skill-wise.
Yeah, it's huge, right? And I think look, been a big proponent of this. I'm not a huge fan of. I'm a fan of education. I'm not a fan of college, right? And I think it costs a ton of money. It puts students in debt. It's just getting more and more and more. And now we're seeing companies. I know IBM is probably the most notable company that
Yeah.
has just they dropped the degree requirements. But we're seeing this trend all the time. And really, the only sort of thing that I could see, like if you graduated like 5 years ago and you're like 100K in debt, and then you see like all these jobs with no degree requirements, you probably it probably sucks for
You're probably
those people.
pissed.
But I think for everybody else, I'm like again, like I'm not a huge fan of this quote necessarily, but the whole hire for attitude, train for skill type thing. But
Mm,
I do think like there is just this in our society there can be just this weird weight on these degrees, and what they're saying is that I mean you get a degree, it really doesn't show that you can do a job at all better than someone who doesn't have a
yeah.
degree. Um, but I've run into it before. In fact, one of my earlier jobs, they actually wanted my transcript, like my whole college transcript, to get a job.
Wow.
It was as a bank manager, believe it or not. So if you run into that, like if you ever run into a company where they're like, we need to see your GPA and everything you did.
That's so strange.
Have you ever run into that?
No, I've never run into that, but I have run into like, I mean, when I was applying to internships in college, they would ask me like, what are your most interesting classes that you're taking? Which I actually
Mm.
really liked that as a question, because no one else cared to ask me that, besides my parents.
You're like, my degree matters. This is amazing.
This matters. I'm taking industrial psychology. It matters so much, you know. But you know what else I have to say about this is a lot of people are opting out of the college system. And I think especially this generation that sort of is seeing that there's a system at play
That's right.
that is not going to work for them, and it hasn't been working for a lot of people for years. And I think that's like kind of the result of this trend that we're seeing, this new collar worker. And with the average of the American workforce it's about to shrink, right? Companies have to do what they can to really ensure that they have a workforce to choose from in 20, 30 years. So one of the best ways, obviously, is lowering the barrier to entry. And realistically, like you said, I like education as well. I don't think that college is the only way to be educated. And I think especially with how fast things are moving and innovation is happening, that other alternatives to college, like boot camps, YouTube, online courses, like
Yeah.
masterclass, right? Like all these things are a place where you can actually get knowledge that will help you, increase your skills and be I guess, a more suitable candidate for a lot of the roles that we don't even know what they are right now.
100%. I mean, I get what's one of the most common questions I get on my TikTok live shows where we're just running for like job seekers. People are always asking about certifications, degrees, this, that. And to your point, I think technology moves so fast. I think about my degree that I got, I don't know, back in 2011. I don't think any of it is really relevant. It did help a little bit when I started in recruitment, just to have a baseline knowledge of different
Yeah,
positions, and I could kind of recruit on different roles. Um, but at the end of the day, skills. I think the one thing I think everybody should learn how to do in general, and I don't think our education system necessarily does a good job of this, is just problem solving. Like just being a problem solver, taking initiative, seeing a problem, taking that initiative, and taking the action.
yeah. I would also argue communication.
Communicate. Yeah, well, texting and is that what?
Yeah, but also like conflict resolution, which kind of overlaps with problem solving.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's a huge miss that colleges and universities like should be teaching, but they're not. But I do think that one of the bigger problems at play too here is that the hiring system is broken. Like most jobs are filled, correct me if I'm wrong, through word of mouth.
Oh man, we're getting in the hidden job market here. Look, I think jobs are filled lots of different ways. At the end of the day, like I would, if a company puts up a job ad and they get qualified people through, they're going to look at those qualified people. If they go through employee referrals, they'll look at that too. I think jobs are filled
Yeah,
in lots of different ways. I think I think you got to apply to jobs nowadays. You've got to network. You got to meet people. You got to go above and beyond. And to your point, I do think these companies lifting off that degree requirement, it opens it up because sometimes it's just
totally.
silly. Like I talk to people who have like 25 years experience. They're killing it. They're doing amazing things. And then they won't get an interview because they don't have a degree. That's just stupid. Like it makes no sense. So I think it's like, what's your degree? Great. You're interested in that. Amazing. But if it's gonna like stop people who actually have great skills and experience being able to work at a company, that to me is where you start to lose it. So, well, let me know from you guys. What do you guys think in the comments? Degree, no degree. You like
Yeah.
this? You think this is a good thing, bad
What did you
thing?
study? Are you doing the thing that you studied? Like, I'm so curious because I feel like a lot of the stats out there say that most people who graduate with a college degree don't end up actually using it.
I would 100% agree with that. And
Yeah.
in recruitment, well, I'd say there's 3 fields where, like, I could see that not applying, like, healthcare is one of them, construction, I used to see a lot of people get, like, a
Yeah.
construction degree and go into construction, and then engineering, that I think those are kind of, like, the 3 in my mind that stick out, but it's like, if you got a general business degree, who knows what you're gonna do? What was
100.
it? What was your degree in?
Mine is actually kind of relevant.
So
I was
you just
very
proved your
intentional. I was
point
like,
wrong.
if because I was very lucky to have my parents pay for my education. So I was like, if this is what I'm able to do, then I need to study the thing that I'm actually going to end up doing. So I thought really critically, and I probably bored my mom at length with conversations about what I was going to study. And I ended up studying psychology, and minoring in media, entrepreneurship, and economics. So feel like that was helpful because of what I do now with like human dynamics and multi-generational workplace, kind of consulting stuff and speaking definitely helped me with that,
Well,
with
that's
that degree.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I got my degree in finance, and I do not work. Well, I did work in banking for a while, but I am out of it. Now I'm a recruiter, which requires 0 degree, which is probably not a good thing. Um, so someone else said, so I take it Heather said, how to communicate effectively with C-suite VPs would be beneficial in a variety of industries. Huge, right?
Yeah.
Those are the types of the real world skills I
Yeah.
like to call them. Well, why
But
don't we move on to the next segment
yeah, let's
here?
do it.
Um, what do we have here?
All right. So essentially, I mean, I see one of these articles every few months, but basically it's now about Gen Z sharing or oversharing on LinkedIn. And, I think that this is funny because Gen Z is very blunt and to the point in a lot of the social media that we post and take control of certain accounts. Like I have seen the most random accounts like Chili's like popping off because there's a Gen Zer behind that social media account.
Duolingo? I just think of Duolingo.
Duolingo, yeah, it's a great one. I was just reading about Chili's, how it's like the next best one. But yeah, so essentially this article is talking about how a Gen Xer is trying to get her engagement numbers up and they're like falling, and she consulted a social media expert, and the social media expert, who was probably a Gen Zer, said post more personal stuff to increase your visibility, and she felt like that felt inauthentic.
Yeah.
And like that's fine. I think we just grow up in we grew up in different times, in different generations, right? And I grew up with an online world since I was 15. I've been on social media, and I find that I feel more authentic if I'm sharing certain things versus holding other things back. And so I'm kind of having an opposite problem where like I'm trying not to overshare. But I'm curious like how like what your relationship is with this too, Joel.
Look, for me, for a long time, like, the personal posts would actually get better engagement than the rest of my content, which I think
Yeah.
is the norm, but now it doesn't happen. Like, I shared a picture or a photo of my daughter on last Friday, and I was basically saying, like, how, some online guru was like, "I don't spend any time with my family because 'cause I'm building a business," and he's, like, glorifying that. I'm just like, "This is so stupid." Like, nothing makes me happier than spending time with my little girl, okay?
Yeah.
And no amount of work is gonna ever be more important than that. And I think that post, it got like 200 likes, 250 likes, which for some people it's like, oh wow, that's a lot. But if I share like a recruiting meme, it gets like 5,000 likes. So I used to share more personal stuff,
Yeah.
and my whole mentality was like, it's nice for people to get to know you and that type of stuff. Um, but now I'm just like, to me, there's just no rules, and I'm like, I think you got to know your audience. Like, I think there are some audiences that appreciate personal and vulnerability, and there's other audiences that don't.
Yeah.
Um, and I somebody made a great point. They were like, no one's gonna like negatively say something about like if you post about your family or you post something personal, like, no one's gonna really say it to your face, but maybe they make a judgment behind your back. But again, it's just people have been talking about this a long time. I think where to that person's point about not being authentic, that's what it is for me. It's like if you're just sharing something for the
For the sake
likes
of
and the
sharing,
vanity
yeah.
metrics, I'm like, that to me is where that's not even authentic. It's
Yeah.
like it seems kind of weird. But there is that tendency to do that. I think when you see personal posts do better than
Right,
everything else.
right. But your point about, like, why your posts didn't do well is probably because people are used to seeing memes and, like, laughing from your
Yeah.
content. So then when they see that, it's like, "Oh, that's nice," but, like, get
Yeah,
back to
it's
your own content,
my
buddy.
recruitment content's way more impressive than my
Yeah.
actual life. So thank you.
Good. I think stick with that, even though your daughter's really cute.
She
Yeah,
is a
no.
cutie. Well,
But
yeah, go ahead.
there are certain, like, examples of oversharing. What's the worst one that you've seen on, or like a bad one that you've seen?
I mean, for me, it always boils down to that crying CEO. I think that was just the cringiest, worst thing. And like,
That was a
look,
big one for
I
you.
commented on that post super early as well, and I think I was like, "Oh wow, I feel so bad for you." Like, and they kind of made fun of the post. It was this whole thing, but that one really, really sticks out to me. And then I've seen people post about everything from like sex habits they've got to like weird
Oh my god.
fetishes, and I'm like, okay, come on, it's LinkedIn, all right? Like what? But again, there's no rules to you do you. That's what I say.
Yeah.
That's my
I
new thing. You do
I
you on
saw one
LinkedIn.
on LinkedIn Lunatics, which by the way is a Reddit page for anyone who doesn't know. Reddit is a website, but basically people post.
Reddit is a
Um,
website, guys.
That is a website. It's not Web3, it's not Web1, it's Web2. Anyway, yeah, so they posted something about seeing like a poll about, is it okay for same-sex coworkers to share a bed on business trips? And I think that's just like so cringe.
Wow.
Like, don't talk about that publicly.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah, well,
yeah,
when polls were big, you would see some. I've seen some really weird
like some
polls.
strange ones.
What's your
But
take on it then? Are you like share personal if you're authentic? Like where do you land on this?
yeah, I think like share, but don't overshare. And if it feels like you're oversharing, you're oversharing. So, anyway, I think we have someone knocking on our door.
Boop boop boop. Oh, we need sound effect. I need some sound effects. All
I
right,
think we do.
who do we have?
Who do we have? Who do we have?
That is right. We have the global report by Smart Recruiters with Alin. Great to see you, Alin. How are you?
I am fabulous, and I just figured out how to turn my mute off. That was almost.
We were
Do you want
gonna
me to?
have like a 2024 Zoom moment there where I'm
We
like,
were just
mute.
about. It was. I was almost there. I was like, oh damn it. So
Saved by whatever this what is it? EV Mux. I love this platform.
yeah,
Why don't you give us a quick intro on Smart
yeah,
Recruiters, and we will get into one of our favorite segments.
absolutely. So, for those who don't know me, and I can't believe you don't, but if you don't, dear Lord, help you get to know me. My name is. I am over here at Smart Recruiters. Smart Recruiters is a next generation applicant tracking system and talent platform. And we're often moving in. We've been spending a lot of time over the last 6 months to a year trying to understand what's going on in the world of work because we believe there's a big transition happening. And so we're starting to engage the world in that conversation. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Well, I know right now, obviously in the U.S., we have it's like election season and politics, as we know, just drives so much feelings and emotions either way. So what are you seeing out there, even just from a global perspective, when it
Yeah, so
comes to
this
these
is
conversations?
right, absolutely. So listen, just if we think about the US, the amount of tension and anxiety in the workplace is on the rise. We're seeing new research and data points coming out of the Pew Research Group. Sherm has been doing a lot of stuff on this. You can decide your opinion on that as you go forward. But nonetheless, there's a lot of conversations going on. Just in general, it is a polarizing moment. It has been. There is a lot of conflict that's arising. There's a lot for kind of HR to navigate in this space. We're seeing, by the way, it's not just in the US, however, globally, there are a lot of elections happening, and there's a similar sort of push and pull. I think what's unique about the US is even though we talk about having a very kind of professional workforce framework, we actually have a very vocal and I would say less formal work framework, right? So people are much more comfortable. They hang out with each other after work. You see a lot more kind of dynamic conversations happening around about what's happening in the news around them. And today that news is around politics, and it causes conflict and angst and stress. And we're seeing downstream implications of that, right? It hits
How do you coach people? Like, what advice do you have for like HR leaders then, and how to like even navigate and have these conversations? Because I did a poll recently where I asked like, should we have these conversations at work? And it seemed
Yeah,
like a lot of people said no, but I don't think that's true. I think people are having these internal
that's
conversations, right?
well, I think that's the crux of it, right? What the biggest challenges that HR has today in the U.S. market, from my perspective, is there is what we say and what actually is happening, and I think
Yep.
there are two very different sides of the fence. This is happening particularly around these conversations around the political landscape, and so I think HR is better suited. Helping people understand how to navigate those conversations rather than focusing on trying to ban conversations, right? Because it doesn't work, right? People don't not have the dialogue or have the impact or have the conversation because these are highly emotional topics. People are very vested in their perspective and their opinions, and the biggest skill HR can work on with teams right now is helping them understand how to express themselves without creating angst or conflict across their organizations. But there's a second tier to this, which is these conversations also not only cause strife in the immediate workplace, but they have impacts to the larger brand, right? So there's kind of two frames of that conversation we need to talk about with our teams. One is how do you be respectful, right? How can you have opinion and dialogue and do it in a respectful way? And kind of what are the boundaries around that? But in addition, there's a difference between a conversation I can have with my team or with my buddy who I go off and have a beer with after work, and the conversation I can have as a representative of the company. And how does that have to show up and what does that look like? And the worst thing that can happen, it happens way too often, is companies don't have a perspective on that. They don't have that conversation out there. And people run off at the mouth, and then the company has to navigate that, right? And companies are horribly bad at that sort of PR. They don't know how to navigate it.
Well, it sounds like so they need to facilitate the conversations in the right
Absolutely.
way. So is that through like ERG groups or like what do you see?
I think you can do it through ERG groups. I think you can do it by working directly with frontline managers and giving them the tools for how to I would say how to negotiate or manage those conversations inside their group settings. But I think you've got to take it as close to actual teams as possible. So anything that's and this is a personal opinion I have in mind, but we see lots of research that talks about this. Anything from an HR level that is a dictator mandate coming from above usually falls very, very flat when it comes down to what's actually happening on the ground. And these
Mm.
sorts of conversations are the types that we don't want people pretending aren't happening when they actually are, because it can have big impacts.
I wonder how many HR leaders and just people leaders in general are kind of more leaning to what you just said, like almost pretending like these conversations aren't happening.
Yeah, they're putting our blinders on, right? And we're all pretending it's not happening. Or we said, listen, we put the mandate out there. We told you all,
Mm.
right? That in the workplace, we do not have this dialogue. We do not have these discussions. We have and they'll frame it under, we have a respectful workplace or any of those sorts of elements in that space, right? But what that gets translated down to for people is that their organizations, their leaders are disconnected, right?
Big
And
surprise.
surprise, surprise, the people who are making decisions may not actually know what's going on the ground.
Mm.
And I also think that if you don't address it, you are putting yourself in a position to be blindsided, because if you pretend it's not there, it's going to sneak up on you, right? Because it's happening. There's just no, I guess the big message here is, guess what, guys? It's happening. All the research out there says these conversations are happening, and it's up to every team to figure out what is that threshold that you can navigate inside your company dynamics that allows you to help support people through those conversations without it becoming an issue or a thing.
So we took internally how we manage these conversations. What about from an employer brand, EVP perspective? What's your advice there? Because again, I think 2020, I saw the most companies I think I've ever seen like take stances on issues, and and then some of them will take stances and then they go back, and it's like it's hard to kind of navigate it. So what's your advice from like just an EVP standpoint?
Yeah, so I think the reason you saw that, by the way, in 2020, and we've continued to see it kind of progressively out there, is there is an understanding that the employer message, right, or the message your kind of employer brand, or even your overall just company consumer brand in today's environment is very connected to how people perceive how are you going to fall, whether it be on issues of social context, whether it be on economic, like people are looking for some sort of non-robotic response, right? So what companies did is they immediately said, okay, I'm going to pivot. I'm going to make sure that I'm like showing up in that way, right? So I mean, my favorite is there is not a month that goes by that isn't the month that belongs to something, and companies who really have no interaction or connection to it whatsoever suddenly blast all over their LinkedIn pages, right? We all know that, right?
Change the profile photo.
Change the profile photo. That's all.
There it is. We're done.
Boom. I now understand. I put a new profile photo up and I'm engaged and I'm connected. And I think that is, people are seeing through that. It has a very negative connotation now for most people from a brand perspective. So what I recommend to PR teams, what I recommend to brand teams, to EVP teams is to be authentic to who you are as a company. And I know that sounds really vague, but it's not. Most companies today have who we are inside our walls and who we are outside our walls, right? This perception that we're always creating perception for people so that they can react to us. Your employer brand at the end of the day is a reflection of who you actually are and how you show up every day as a company with your employees and your teams and your workforce, right? That if you do the good work there, show up authentically there, it will translate outside. Right. And we're seeing more and more people are looking for that sort of authentic reflection and connection. They want it to be around things like there are key issues. We know there are key issues you need to be able to think about. How are you showing up in terms of the climate, the environment? That's hot at the moment, right? People want to understand that and connect to it. How do I, when I show up and work with this company, what is that reflection on who I am in relationship to a variety of different issues, right? The things that are important to me.
I mean, flexible work schedules. Where do we get work done? Like what
Right.
what are the mentality? And again, this is a huge one. It just seems to be a never-ending debate on work from home, remote, hybrid, all of this, and you see leadership. I mean, I've seen it recently in the news where an executive will say something and then they'll get backlash and then they kind of change what they say. And in some ways, you're like, look, this is part of your EVP is say what you mean and just stick with it, like for better or worse, almost.
Right. It is okay. I think that there has been there's this weird line that we're crossing in the market today where it used to be having an opinion was something that you were told not to have as a company because somebody could not like your opinion. But what that translates to, particularly as we start thinking about Gen Z, as we start thinking about some of the younger millennials, what that translates to is when you show up with no opinion, it makes it look like you are something to hide, that you are not showing up as authentic, right? So now you have to walk this fine line to say, how do I now have a perspective and a point of view that allows me to show up as authentic to who we are as a company and understand that is going to sit well with some and not with others. And that requires you to be okay with not being okay in some spaces. So you've got to figure out what that is for you. In the world of remote work, and we start thinking about flexible work, now we start talking about a different dialogue and conversation, which is leadership in companies who are working from one paradigm and belief system. I'll call it a very paternal belief system, right? Which is I will set up infrastructures in order to ensure you operate and work the way I need you to, so that I feel comfortable that you're going to provide for me what I need to make my company work. Versus individuals, right, who are saying, I have a life, right? I'm a unique human being, a unique individual. And I know enough about myself to know how I am most productive. And so the conversation is really shifting. It used to be about remote work, and then we went into this hybrid work bull crap, which is basically just corporate's version of trying to rein in remote work, which isn't landing
By the
well.
way, I hate hybrid because it's like I just need one setup, and
Pick a
like
thing.
I can't
Right.
do the
Right. To
whole.
me, that's the perfect example of exactly where that whole PR conversation went to, right? We're going to put a foot in both worlds and say we like everybody. It
Yeah.
doesn't work that way, right? Pick a thing,
Yeah.
right? But people are understanding the conversation is now becoming about not just where I work from, but how I work, when I work, and how I show value. And it's part of that natural progression, moving away from I am a member of this company to I am an individual with skills and capabilities, and I am providing to this company for a period of time.
Reid Hoffman had that prediction about the 9 to 5 ending in 2035, I think was the prediction.
Yep.
Thoughts on that?
It's coming, and I would be surprised if 2030. Well, okay, I always say this: I make things happen faster than they're actually going to happen. I think that's probably a very realistic prediction.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see it already, right? We're
100%.
starting to see it happen, and it will happen quietly. There is the conversation all of us are having, right? Like we like to discuss all of these big concepts, but
Good podcasts material.
podcast, and we'll record some stuff. But on a day-to-day level, people in their jobs are already starting to make these things happen, and they don't know how to label it. It just is how they're evolving their work, right? A great example of that is the when everybody started to wake up to the idea of, oh my goodness, perhaps people are quiet vacationing. Again, another bullshit term, right? But at the end of the day, it comes down to people will figure out a way to make their work environment work for them, which is what the main shift is in mindset.
100%. I know one other topic that is huge right now, immigration and like how you handle immigration. And I know one of the focal points is, hey, we have a talent shortage. There's jobs that need to be filled. So talk to us about, like, from a global perspective, how some of these policies
Right.
actually impact, genuine needs that we have, and what your perspective on that is, what you're seeing out there.
So this is a huge conversation that's happening.
Just like in 1 minute. Just kidding.
Right. In 1 minute, let's talk about it, right? Huge conversation happening. Here's what people need to understand. All the way at the level of the UN, when we're talking about the International Organization for Migration, they are starting to have deep conversations. Why this is important to you as a recruiter is because those conversations are now starting to become not just about what type of migration do we need and what type of immigration do we need, but starting to understand some root cause issues around things like how we set up taxation and work structures inside countries to allow people to navigate and to migrate successfully, for companies to hire people who are moving from one country to another, or remote working, or shifting and working from various different locations, right? It's all connected together. This whole story is connected together. People want to work where they want to work, how they want to work, and when they want to work. And the infrastructures that are set up at a global level, at each individual country level, are not set up to support those sorts of work conditions. And the root of it, they're talking about it at the migration level, but it's really about thinking about immigration law, thinking about the ability to connect people to jobs and allowing people to work across borders. So a lot of work happening in that space. I think we're going to see a lot of shifting in it.
100%. Well, you've got a big event coming up in Amsterdam in September 11th. So is this going to be what the conversation is around, hiring success? Like, are these going to be the topics that you guys are discussing? Give us an overview.
Yeah,
of that.
we are going to go and have those conversations. Listen, we are bringing, for those who don't know about him, there's a gentleman out there who is probably one of the brightest minds in digital anthropology, and talking about the impact of AI, not just in HR, but in the larger ecosystem and what's happening in that space. His name is Brian Solis. He'll be kicking us off. Really
shout out to Brian.
Brian, love Brian. So excited. I can't even tell you. I'm like geeking out. It's like, he's going to be amazing. And really frame a conversation that's not about just TA or HR, but a conversation that's about what's happening in the world. And then we're going to progress that throughout the entire day to talk about, so how do we respond to that? And what does that mean to have practical solutions, not just from a technology perspective, but from a process perspective, from a strategy perspective? How does that show up, and how do we show up in those spaces? So Matt Alder's going to be there running a panel. We got John Stanners who's coming in to talk about the impact of the future of work to TA. And we have another great individual, if people haven't heard about him, Eddie Panero, who's going to be coming in and just hopefully motivating everybody and giving them some tips to move forward. And if you show up, you get to go on the boat and have some drinks.
Cannot beat that. I mean, Amsterdam's
Yeah.
beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
Alin, it's so great to have you on here. And I would just say, if you're not following Alin on LinkedIn, you're posting a lot of really quality video content, and definitely advise following and connecting. Where else can people find you? Where can they find out about Smart Recruiters?
So obviously the easiest one, guys, smartrecruiters.com. Head on over, and
You heard it here.
Yeah, you heard it here, and you want to get over there now and start watching.
I love it.
It's going to be a really fun fall. So see you all soon.
Amazing. Well, we will see you next week.
Awesome.
For some more conversation. Thank you so much for all the value here, and we will we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Joel.
All right. Bye.
Ooh, that was a fun intro.
What do we have here?
If you are unemployed, I just heard the best job search tip that I've probably ever heard in all 3 of my layoffs in all the years that I've been dealing with this.
It was from me.
So we were just on my Slack community call, and there was a former HR professional recruiter on there. She's currently laid off looking for work. And someone else on the call asked the question of, how do you know, how to structure your day? Like, we have all this time, it's hard to prioritize. It's hard to figure out when you are doing meaningful work, when you're spinning your wheels, and then also how to prioritize yourself and your mental health, etc. Yeah. So we go through like our conversation, and people are sharing what they do and how they approach the job search and how they make sure that when they're actually focused on it, the work that they're doing is meaningful, etc. So this woman, who is a former HR professional / recruiter, she said that when she was working, Monday morning she'd post the job, and she would just let applications come in all day.
Post and pray.
Tuesday morning, and she'd see how many.
Is your alter ego,
applied.
Joelle?
Tuesday was the day that she would go through all the applications, and she's like, that was the day, and she told us she didn't use ATS. There were certain questions that would knock out a candidate. So if there was like a specific thing they were looking for and you didn't have it, you were turned away. Like if it was something with a specific role, education, whatever credential qualification. So those people get knocked out, but she would personally go through all the resumes.
How is that possible?
Was Tuesday. She said Wednesday and Thursday she's making phone calls to the qualified candidates to set up interviews for the following week. And then Friday, if she didn't feel like she got qualified candidates or if not enough people applied, she would repost the job. So she said the way she approaches her search now on the other side is Monday, she power applies to jobs. Like she's applying to every job, she's applying to things through Tuesday morning. Knowing and understanding that on the other side of the table, Tuesday is the day people are probably reviewing the applications. And then she said on Wednesday and Thursday, she doesn't apply for jobs because she's like, that's the day that they're making the calls for the following week. So they're not looking at anything. They're just looking at the people that have already applied. So sure, you can apply on those days, but it might not go anywhere. You might as well wait till next Monday or Friday when they repost the job. If they repost the job, it's because they haven't gotten any qualified candidates, and they're hoping that if they repost the job on Friday, they'll get the people on Saturday and Sunday that maybe already are employed and are looking, but they don't have the time to do it during the week. This was genius. So she essentially said Monday she power applies through Tuesday morning. Tuesday she kind of slows down. Wednesday,
came
Thursday,
from you
she
for
gets
sure.
to
All right,
celebrate
I think we
that
could
and
pause
do
it.
I gotta find this
She
video
gets some other
on
stuff done,
TikTok,
she
and
works
I
on
gotta
maybe
do a
just a side
stitch on
hustle,
this
whatever.
today and just
then
rip
Friday
it.
is when she reviews any repost.
All right.
Please.
Why are we still hearing her?
Please.
All right.
Oh man, I'd literally rather watch anything than that video.
You are so. I've never seen you so worked up.
I just
over a video.
I'm like Oh man, I don't know where to start on just like I have a schedule in what I do as a recruiter, and so now the rule is every recruiter is gonna do
Every
exactly what I
recruiter is
do
the
in
same.
every company. I'm like, what kind of this is honestly, these are the moments that I really start to actually feel, I don't know what emotion it is, but just I feel deeply for actually people who are on the job search because they run across videos like this and they
Yeah,
literally will save that and they will
it's
make a
like
schedule
Bible.
like that. Exactly. And that's what happens. Somebody says something and they have an ounce of credibility and suddenly it's like
Yeah.
that's the rule. So that was
And
bad.
that's why you're the realest recruiter, because you call that out.
Yeah, and most of the time, I mean, most of my content is like, I don't actually have the answers. I don't know if there is one way. But I do know you got to try lots of different things, and if
Yeah.
something starts to work, do it. Kind of going
Well,
back to that original
so is
conversation.
that would that be your advice then? Like, counter to this, is it just, like, find what works for you? Like, what's the
Look,
what's
I think
helpful?
early and often I've seen work. So Google Jobs is like severely
Yeah.
underutilized. Put notifications on there. If a job posting that's new that you're a fit for, what I mean a fit for is like 70-80% of the qualifications.
Mm,
You got to be honest with yourself. If they're asking for global experience, you never had global experience. If they're asking for 10 years experience and you got 2 years experience, probably not the job for you. So make that determination, get in early, and it's like the way I equate it right now is like it's basically sales. And anyone in sales will tell you you've always got to be building up the pipeline, always got to be thinking about what opportunities there are. You would never tell someone in sales to hop on a sales call and go, yeah, forget about the rest of the prospecting. It's like
yeah.
you gotta keep the ball moving. You gotta reach out to people you gotta follow up. Unfortunately, it's just the case. You actually gotta put in some real work right now, which is why I often say job search is one of the hardest jobs there is. Um, but I don't know. What was like the if we were to watch that video over, which I don't suggest anyone do, what was like the worst part of that video for you?
Yeah, I feel like what you already said is probably the the worst part. It's like taking what because one person does it, like then everyone does it. It kind of reminded me of like a girl going on a date and then coming up with like a whole story in their head about the person that they went on a date with and like what they're thinking, which I think women tend to do. Not me not being feminist, I'm just like being real with like what girls do, including myself at certain times of my life. And I think that rumination can actually be a huge distraction from the actual act of job searching. So like if I were to give anyone advice, I think like doing things in moderation, like applying to jobs every single day,
Exactly.
is probably the best route, because you never know if like someone might be going through applications on a Friday, at the end of the week versus on a Monday. Like I don't really understand that that kind of
Well, it's like
mentality.
when people are like, "Oh, here's the perfect times to post on social media." I'm like, "That's
Yeah.
what you're focused on? Like, you should focus on the quality of your content."
Yeah.
Like, if you post it on 2 or 10 or 9, if it's terrible content, it's not getting seen. Similar idea, like, if you've got a good
Totally.
resume and you qualify for a job, a recruiter is if you truly qualify for the job, you're gonna have a higher probability of getting the job. But I like your strategy. A couple times a day, 5 to 10 applications a day,
Yeah.
just keep it going. I do think you can get burned out, but I've just never to feel good about telling people not to apply to jobs. I find it really hard. And again, you mentioned it earlier, like, well, a lot of people find jobs through people they know. There's truth to that. But I've also, in every poll I've ever done on LinkedIn about this, the majority of people say that they found their last job through applying for jobs. And so I just think it's start to border on some advice I just don't think is that helpful.
Mm,
And again, not to say that like I found a lot of my jobs through people I know. I think that's a really strong
same.
way to start. But um, I've talked to plenty of hiring managers who are like, yeah, we had a great applicant that came through last
Yeah.
night, and I'm working on the search for them. So
Yeah. It's not the same market it was. So I feel like applying to jobs is part of the strategy for anyone, but so is networking. I think you have to have a multi-pronged approach in this job
exactly,
market, and
exactly.
constantly also be having conversations, because again, going back to what you and Alin were talking about Reid Hoffman and his predictions, I don't think that everyone looking for jobs right now is going to end up in a traditional role.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of like hybrid roles are going to be created. I think a lot of like, contract based work, 3-month contracts, and then potential for expanding that contract, to a more full-time offer. Like, I think a lot of those are probably more likely to happen than finding a full-time job straight off the bat. So I think like people also need to be open-minded as to the structure of the job. I think that what you said today on social media was like not no job is stable, and I think people have to have that mentality going into this job search for the next job search, right? Like this
100%.
job isn't stable, so what can I do now to set myself up for success later on, knowing that this job is not permanent?
Yeah, and when I talk about stability, I'm just like, sometimes people talk to me like that, like the next job is the thing they're going to do for the rest of their life.
Right.
Because look, it's just you can't view that. All right, it's unlikely that that's going to happen statistically. But well, why don't we now that we've weathered that storm,
Oh, we got through it.
why don't we see what is actually going on in the weather with Serge?
Man, I love that graphic. I think it's perfect. And that video just enrages me. So I'm glad we're moving topic. But let's get to the HR weather because this week I'm sounding the weather alert for companies that think they can fix bad retention with good recruitment. I think we've all heard the stories of Amazon literally running out of people that they can recruit in their core markets because of bad turnover. The thing is, recruitment is pretty much useless unless you solve some of your turnover problems. I think fixing the root cause of why people are leaving is so important. If you think about it, if you have a crappy workplace culture, maybe you should take a look at fixing that. If employees are leaving because they're unhappy with their role, with the pay, or the work life balance, and just hiring people won't solve that unless you're really addressing the core issues. The other thing, recruitment is pretty expensive. It's a massive drain on funds when it comes to advertising, to leveraging technology, but also on resources. If your hiring managers are constantly interviewing instead of doing the job that they're hired for, which is running the business, you've got an issue. So, creating an environment where your performing employees feel valued, engaged, and motivated to stay is so important. So, don't get me wrong, strong recruiting systems are critical, but retaining your top talent should be every organization's top priority. You can't out recruit your way out of turnover. So, for a better forecast, make retention a priority. This should be every organization, what they're looking at right now. How can we retain our top talent? So, for a better forecast, that's all you need to do. So, that is the HR weather. Let's get back to the panel. So,
like
what's your thoughts here? A lot of companies are spending a lot of time, a lot of resources on getting talent. We've all talked about it. It's challenging for some roles, but why is retention something that they really don't always consider? Or if they do, they just see it as too big a problem that they can't fix. What's your thoughts, Joel?
Look, I did a thread about this. As a recruiter, I'll never understand why companies will spend thousands on hiring new employees who usually don't last instead of giving money to raises for hardworking,
Yeah.
loyal employees who deserve it. Now, that's a little bit of clickbait in there, a little bit, but
Yeah.
I never understood. It's even like when I sit down with recruitment teams and say, okay, why is this role open? Okay, the company's growing, and then you ask that question. If you don't ask this question, you always get screwed over. But you always say like, well, is there anyone internally that could do the job? And I think
like that.
there was a time where the L&D budgets seemed to be growing when companies had really cheap money. But that's really the only time I've ever seen companies really have that focus on increasing was like maybe in that 21, 22 time period where it was really hard to
Yeah.
recruit people. Um, I think it comes down to just short-term thinking, and I think to your point with like Amazon just churning over people, um, I don't know if we're motivating those middle managers in the right way to have vision for like actually keeping people and investing in people. So it's sad.
I think it kind of goes to where the incentive is, right? If middle managers are not incentivized on keeping their top employees, really there's no focus on it. And how many times I know in recruiting this is always a challenge, that you're replacing someone that has like industry knowledge, company knowledge, and you end up losing them, and you pay the person you're replacing them 20, 30, 40% more,
It's crazy.
and they don't always work out. What's your experience with this, Danielle?
Yeah, I mean, it's very unfortunate. I think there is a lot of potential that's lost in, companies letting people leave and just like not incentivizing, the loyalty. I think loyalty is dead. I think it has been for a
Yeah.
little bit now. And I think, going back to my conversation with Mervyn last week or 2 weeks ago, I can't remember. Am I getting old?
A little bit. A little bit, Danielle.
Shoot. Yeah, no. So, you guys are rubbing off on me. It's okay. No, but
Harsh.
I think when you think about the era of work and employment that maybe, Serge, you graduated into, I think it was so much different, right? Like
I
there,
was gonna tell a joke, but I didn't.
no more age jokes. I'm tapped out for today. But no, I think that, there was lifelong employment at a certain point.
Yeah.
And, we were reading that New York Times article last week about, how HR is struggling. And it brought up like the fact that their role has sort of shifted in the past 30 years, from being a place where, they kind of were there for people, but then now have shifted more so, well, they're there for the business and to
Yeah.
help that, kind of the churn honestly, happen. And I think it's unfortunate. I think most companies that are smart, are focusing on retention, instead of sort of recruiting externally. And I think at the same time, as skills change and we have an increase in the need for different skills and for more technical skills and more specialized skills, I think it's never been more important for companies to invest in their talent. And I think it will pay off in the long term. Like Joel was mentioning, the short term, they're thinking short term. I think if you invest in your talent today, it will pay off in the long run.
What's your thoughts?
I love this comment too in the chat. I don't know if you saw this. Put your attention on retention.
Yeah, I love it.
There we go. Tim, Mr. Meaningful Work. We got to get him on here. He's a great character.
So what do you think, if we think about all the layoffs, like we're seeing it across the last 4 years, but for a long time, companies, when we talk about loyalty, it really all started going downhill when companies started doing a bunch of layoffs. Do you think that is one of the biggest challenges that we have right now? Companies or employees don't feel loyal and don't want to stay in companies because they feel they'll let go the minute that times get a little bit tough or something comes like AI that could replace them. And they're like, screw it. I'm always going to be looking for that opportunity because I never want to be laid off. Or do you think that's a big cause of what's causing massive amount of turnover right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I hate to do this because it's like when I started in recruitment a decade ago, there was just such an emphasis on like culture fit and culture.
Yeah.
And I've honestly come to the point where I'm like, I do agree that having a great culture is important and all of those things in theory, but then there's also this weird reality where, because that narrative's been pushed and because you go to websites where they're like, yeah, we really care about inclusion. We care about making we care about you being yourself and all this sort of stuff. But then in reality, you have this other callous side of just layoffs over Zoom and it's just business. It's not you, it's just business. I think it's so hard to come back from that. And we've just been battered by headline after headline after headline. Danielle mentioned it earlier. It's like this, it's trust. And I think you can build that and you can rebuild it, but it's not just going to be like slapping like a fancy thing on a career site. with like video. It's like when we hear stuff like that, I think a lot of people are just like, okay, great, we want to invest in you long term, and then you get laid off 3 months later. It's those messages. It erodes trust in the long term. That's my
As I
thought.
used to tell my ex-boyfriends, actions speak louder.
Well, I
really
I
true.
call it the Instagram versus reality, right? You're seeing all of these employment brand messages that talks about culture, and within the first week that you're there, you're like, all of that was BS, right? Like it's actually a pretty crappy culture here, and people just feel disillusioned and they
Yeah.
just take off.
All right.
100%.
Well, thanks for bringing the weather surge. It's been lovely seeing you.
Thank
Love that
you.
graphic too. That graphic is the best. I
It
love it.
is the best. I love it.
All right. Well, we will move on. We are going to cut to our second commercial break. Mr. Meaningful Work in the comments. Thank you so much. And Serge, good to see you.
All right, all right. We are back with our very own Debra Squyres from Bonusly. How are you, Debra? Where are you in the world?
I am doing well. I'm coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas. So not far
Ooh,
from Dallas, in case you don't know where Fort Worth is. Hi,
very nice.
Danielle.
I'm doing great. I'm in Connecticut in beautiful blue skies. I'm excited to get outside after this and do a little bit of tanning, to be honest.
Oh, nice.
Right? But I think that last conversation, was a seamless transition into this one. So when we were talking about engagement, retention, that's seems like it's your jam. Can you tell us a little bit more about like what your focus has been, a little bit more about your background, the work that you're passionate about?
Yeah. So what I'm passionate about is for people to be happy and thriving. And we spend the majority of our time at work. And so I've spent my entire career with the personal mission to make work better. And that's what we do at Bonusly as well. Our commitment is to make work better. And we live in a free agency market these days. The discussion around retention and loyalty is one that we've been having for years. In fact, that War for Talent McKinsey article came out in the late 80s. So this is something that we've been talking about for quite some time, but the nature of work has changed drastically over the last 4 to 5 years. And you add generational shifts in the workplace. You've got something like 10,000 baby boomers leaving the workforce every day
Yeah.
at this point. The nature of work and the way that we work has fundamentally shifted, and we're still using last century's solutions and processes, and surprised that we're not getting better results today.
Right. So from that perspective of, we're using old technologies, like what do you think is required, for organizations to really edge up their game and meet people where they are in this new economy of working?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We really need to meet people in the flow of work. We can't take them out of their day-to-day work in the way that they want to work. The workplace is no longer at the water cooler, if the audience even knows what a water cooler is these days. Like
I do.
literally, okay.
The audience, aka
People
me.
don't meet up in the lunchroom anymore and build relationships. So we
Right.
have to meet them where they are, and people demand flexibility. So using old ways of doing things, it's not just technology, it's also old processes. If you think in terms of one of the oldest processes that we have in the workplace is the performance review.
Oh.
Do you have any idea when the performance review started?
Like the Industrial Revolution?
In the early 1900s, like
Okay.
in the 19 teens,
Wow.
as a military review practice in World War One.
Wow. So we're using wartime technology. We can call it that.
Yes, it's even older than I am at this point.
Wow.
So like it's really old.
You're not that old.
And so it's no wonder that people don't feel like the workplace provides them an opportunity to be
Right.
happy and thriving, because we're doing things in a way that don't make any sense for the world of work and the way that we work today. One of the things that we do really poorly in the workplace is empower our managers to be great. We have consistently looked at, great managers as an exception and not the rule. And it's not easy to be a great manager, but companies are actually standing in the way of people managing well and becoming great managers. One, there's just a general lack of training, but then we force processes and tooling
Yeah.
on them that don't work.
Yeah. There was a really great report that came out last year that was talking about how how managers spend their time and how they'd like to spend their time.
Yeah, exactly. So nobody signs up to be a manager in order to not do a great job for their team members. But if you force them into processes that take them out of their day-to-day and take them out of the time that they need to spend with their team members for hundreds of hours a year, then it's no wonder they can't show up at their best. And when managers don't show up at their best, they can't actually bring out the best in their team members. So if we give them the tools and the capabilities and the awareness to celebrate the wins of their teams, to understand the strengths of their team members and bring those out, we empower managers to bring out the best in their teams, and that delivers real, tangible business results.
Right.
But we consistently don't follow that process in practice in the real world.
Right. So tell us, you're talking a lot about, how to encourage, that next generation as well. And given that there are 5 different generations in the workforce, how are your clients finding ways to inspire and encourage this multi-generational workforce with different needs and tendencies, right? Like Gen Z receives feedback differently, wants to be engaged differently than Gen X or, Gen Y, and has communication differences. How are you finding, clients finding those new ways to encourage that workforce?
Yeah, I think one of the underlying principles is that we're finding our clients are meeting their employees where they are. And so rather than generalizing that Gen Z wants this or Gen X wants that, it's who are you as an individual, and individualizing that feedback. Really recognizing each person brings their own unique strengths. They don't sign up for a job and then don't want to do great work. And companies want their teams to do great work. So really understanding how those individuals are contributing, bringing transparency to what great work is happening, like really celebrating the wins, enrich stories about how people are either living the values or working together. That is a way to actually provide great transparency into what good looks like for the company. And that helps people understand what is expected. So it takes some pressure off of managers themselves in conveying that repeatedly, really democratizing the engagement across the team and building a workplace on positive recognition as a way to reinforce what we want to see
Good behavior.
everyone engaging in. Yeah.
Typical. It's like, typical psychology.
It's good psychology. Yes.
Reinforcing good behavior. But, I love so many things about what you're saying, specifically, that there's this one example that I love that companies have created like internal podcasts, right? To meet their employees where they're at. If you're commuting to work, like it's an easy thing to listen to a podcast where you're getting a bunch of information, communication, but you're also getting to know the culture of a company. And what we were talking about before earlier too, it's like the best way to, attract and retain talent is to showcase your culture. I think this is exactly what we're talking about.
That's it. That's it. And culture is not like posters on a wall or
Right.
slides in a presentation delivered by an HR team who is
Yeah.
definitely committed to helping create a great culture. It's created by the people. And so you have to bring that forward.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time people feel underappreciated and undervalued. And so feedback, I always love the saying, feedback is free
hmm
and feedback is valuable to everyone involved, right? And I think that creating a culture of, this bi-directional feedback is something that I'm a huge proponent of, that I help organizations kind of navigate, given that Gen Z is a little bit different and a little bit, more sensitive sometimes. Can you share, just like as we wrap up here, like one actionable tip for giving feedback?
Yeah, I think giving that positive feedback is really it establishes trust, and it makes way and creates space for providing constructive feedback. And a lot of times the giver of feedback is really concerned about providing that constructive feedback. There's a lot of fear associated with it, so we hold
Mm,
back. But if you ground your feedback in caring for the other person, the most caring thing that you can do is provide candid, kind, but direct feedback to help them improve. If you truly care about that
mm,
other person, you don't only celebrate what they're great at and their wins, but you also help them make that small adjustment that will increase their impact or increase their effectiveness. And that's really, when looking inside, like how you need to come at providing constructive feedback, and that's also how you need to receive it.
Oh, I love that so much. Wow, that's beautiful. What was it? Kind,
Kind,
compassionate,
candid,
candid,
direct.
and direct.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
I love that. I
Yes.
I want that.
Yes. I think we all do. And when we unleash our team members to do that for each other, it's not just like a top-down approach.
Ooh,
We really unleash the power of teams.
I love that. I love that. Wow. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you come back. This is such an incredible conversation. I feel like it was also actionable and like totally heart-centered. So keep
Ah,
doing what you're doing,
thank
empowering
you.
incredible managers and teams to do their best and live their best lives. And yeah, hope to see you back sometime soon.
I would love to come back. Thank you so much, Danielle. Enjoy the
Thanks,
sunshine
Deborah.
later.
Thank you. I will. Bye. Right, this week we have our pet of the week, our HR Pause pet of the week, Goose,
Goosey.
from Joel Stupka, who is still on paternity leave. So sweet.
I just want to pet Goose right now.
And I have to say this part of our little broadcast is sponsored by This Way Global and their new tool Solely Sandbox, which we spoke about just 2 weeks ago. It's a user-friendly interface to search and discover valuable data and AI solutions, like the coolest thing ever. With access to high-quality data sets, you tap into trusted and secure data and AI solutions. So take a cue from Sully and come play in the sandbox. We love Sully and also the pets that Sully brings us. And if you want to schedule a demo or you want to contribute to a great cause, you can scan the QR code on the screen and you will be participating in This Way Global's Pause for Pause program, where they donate $100 to your favorite pet charity. So scan the QR and they donate to a nonprofit. That's incredible. We love that.
That
Thank
funny
you.
looking thing for the old people is a QR code as well, just so you know.
And it says this way, which is actually it's a helpful key, but it's
Love it.
yeah, that's great. All
I
right.
love it.
Awesome. Thank you, Goose. Very, very cute.
Goosey.
Ooh. Ooh, I like it. We
Ooh.
finally have a song.
It's nice. I like it's very smooth and just kind of like chill, good vibes going
Yeah.
out there. So I
It's a
love that.
bop. It's a bop. We love a bop. All right. Well, this week's word of the week is one that is blowing up. It's all over my feed. It is demure.
Demi Moore.
And if you didn't see the clip of the nanny That's right, Fran Drescher, who I once saw at a restaurant in LA. Very, very cool. I love her. I'm obsessed. She used it on the show The Nanny in one scene. It was incredible. But demure, the resurgence of the word, has come from a creator named Jules LeBron, who earlier this month posted a video on the interwebs that she described what it took to arrive at work. And it's basically a video where she's like telling everyone, I put it on a little bit of makeup, but not too much. And I, fix my wig, but like I don't spend too much time on it. It's basically, a way to say do a little bit without doing too much to showcase what it means to be professional, which I really love. And I think that a lot of people have taken it upon themselves to really declare what is and isn't demure. I'd like to know what you think demure is. And let's go from there.
As you guys know, I love TikTok. I love all of these trends. But this one, it's just like I was like, can I go along with this trend? Like, do I know how to explain demure? Could I do demure? And I was like, I don't know if I embody it. So
Trust.
I think maybe we go back to like the Brat Summer. Like that was kind of like
Your jam. I
yeah,
think it's kind of
yeah,
funny that we went from Brat Summer to Demure. Like Brat
yeah,
Summer was crazy, chaotic energy, like going out, waking up with 3 hours of sleep, like slaying at work.
yeah.
But then Demure is like the total opposite. It's like going to sleep early and like putting on like your lip gloss and and applying to jobs only on Mondays or just a little bit every day. Like that's Demure. But it also is all about how you convey it. So I feel like you could if you tried hard enough, Joel.
Well, who's more demure, me or Adam? And he's not here to defend himself, but come on,
I
this is
think
easy.
you, because you're more
Me? No,
yeah, I think so.
no. I give it to Adam. I think
Mm.
I think he. Well, I don't know. He's kind of a Brat Summer
No,
too.
he's
So
Brat Summer. He's fully been like traveling and stuff.
it's true. It's
And you're
true.
demure because you broke your arm and then you just
It's
had to
good
be
now. It's good. I haven't even complained about it.
oh
Only,
yeah,
you
let's
know.
go. You could do a fist pump.
Woo! Well, look, I learn something new every week on this show, and I
You're
always I
welcome.
always feel old in this section, even though I shouldn't really feel that old. I do, but I don't know.
It's the best of us.
I'm just gonna enjoy using this word like 4 times this week.
Yeah. And then forgetting about it.
But I mean, it's great for you guys if you want to stay ahead of LinkedIn. They'll be posting about this on LinkedIn in about 4 months.
4 months.
So just do it before then.
And you'll be
Uh,
good.
All right. Well, that was the Gen Z word of the week. I love this section. Let me know in the chat. Demure, are you demure? Am I demure? Let me know what you think in the
What's
chat.
demure?
What's demure? What's demure to you? And then why don't we move on to our next guest right now? Brad Montague in the house. Great to have you, Brad. How are you? Oh, is it just
I'm doing well, except for obviously not muting my mic or unmuting it.
It's perfect. It's a perfect start. Well, talking about failing, which I mean, we could say that was a little bit of fail. What do you? Why do I look? I've been doing some research on what you are up to, and I have to say, I love I love what you are promoting and what the move. It's almost like a movement you're starting. So why don't you get us up to speed on what you're up to?
Yeah, well, I did not want to do this. I did not want to be somebody who talked about failure. And then suddenly people are like, "Hey, you know what? You know what you're an expert on?
Wow.
Really getting it wrong." And so if you could just help people do that. Yeah, I threw a party and it was just supposed to be a one-time thing. And we called it a failibration.
I love that. That's so
I
cool.
treated some of my most accomplished friends who've won awards and been best-selling authors and built massive companies, and but they weren't allowed to talk about any of that. They had 5 minutes. They had to share their biggest screw up, and I just thought it would be this really funny kind of gathering. We'd have snacks, and it would be great. But then what happened is people got emotional. Like, yeah, we
Yeah.
laughed and it was cringy and all the things, but yet it also brought everybody together. And a lot of the people in the room were strangers because they were different friend groups, different people from all over. And yet we ended that night feeling like family because it was just this human connection. And that one party turned into several where lots of people were throwing failabrations. And Priya Parker, who writes about the art of gathering, she did a whole story on doing a purposefully bad event. And it's grown to where we now have, like, next month there's more than 200 failabrations happening, and it's in companies, it's in boardrooms, classrooms, all the way from preschoolers are doing them all the way up to even people who are in prisons. And
Wow.
it just like it's just it's really taught me a lot about how I'm not alone and feeling like I don't get this being a person thing right all the time.
It's so interesting because I think in this day and age, we tend to talk a lot more about our accomplishments. I mean, all you have to do is scroll on social media and you get to see everybody's accomplishments, what they're up to, how they're succeeding, how they're doing these things. And I feel like we don't talk about failure enough. But then I also think there's this weird like within companies, for example, there's this pressure of like, you've got to perform, you've got to do everything right. And so it really doesn't surprise me that as you start talking about failures, there's almost like a unification with that vulnerability. So like I guess what have been some of the comments that you've received from other people as they go, and like how has this even just like changed the way that they're operating and the way that they're able to be vulnerable with other people?
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, you're right. There's a thing that I've definitely been noticing when I'm in a large group where I will see their physical posture change. Like their posture go from, this poise, this like kind of tight pressure, to whenever these conversations start happening, they're leaning forward and then they're relaxing into their
Mhm.
seat and relaxing into being. I see their physical bodies relax. And I've seen it happen in classrooms and I've seen it happen with adults. 1 in 3 kids deals with anxiety, like to such a degree they can't function. 1 in 3. And there's all of this sort of pressure cooker environment of testing and schedules that they deal with. And then there's all the pressure that adults have in whatever context they're in. We did a Failabration with a room full of educators. And
Mm.
I was really scared because it was an arena, 5,000 people. And I'm going, I don't know how this is going to work. And yet these educators get up and start sharing about their things that didn't go quite well. They're sharing about a student that they failed. They didn't see them as who they were and their potential. They didn't fully see them until the end of a school year. So you like
Mm.
start realizing the stakes are high in those kinds of mistakes. But then they also shared ones that made each other laugh. But there was one educator who shared that she perceived herself as being a failure because she had this crisis of mental health and she needed help and she had to take a break for a year. And what I saw was the whole room, like all the people who are sharing the stories, they all circle around her as she's, too emotional to share the rest of her story. And I saw a whole arena turn into a living room. And so what I'm recognizing is that in any context, if there's people, there's likely pain and there's likely a way in which we can help each other know they're not alone in that. And so it's not a celebration of failure. It's not a celebration of mediocrity. It's a celebration of, hey, we can grow and help each other grow. And there's a big movement in education a while back, Carol Dweck's growth mindset, and that got pushed, and people see that, and that's really healthy. But there's this next phase I think we need in companies and classrooms and homes all over, of having a culture of growth, not just individual growth, but an entire community where you can grow and help each other grow. And I'm seeing models and examples of that all over.
Well, it's funny. I think even in nature, right? It's like you think about how a plant grows, a lot of times to actually see new growth, you got to break it at the stems. And
Yeah.
I feel like it's one of those things that one of the interesting things you said was it's not celebrating failure, but it's you celebrate what almost can come from that failure when you have a perspective of, okay, I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow, I'm going to get stronger. I mean, I've seen this as a business owner where you just make decisions sometimes that just don't work. But I do find that, like, in corporate settings, in classrooms, that is not the culture. Like, we have this weird culture of everything has to be right, which produces a pressure. So where do you think that stems from? Like, does that really just stem from, like, the way that our school system tests and we have, like, pass fail? Or, like, where do you think that really comes from?
A lot of it comes from feeling like that's safe. Like it's safe for me to present myself as having it all figured out, and it's a lot of environments aren't deemed as being safe for you to screw up or safe to be imperfect in any way, whether it be school or a work environment. And yet, those are the kinds of a culture of growth is a place where it is we can share the things that we learned from. So you can share the things that didn't quite go as well, where we can go forward with them. The thing that I've really been moved by are seeing the kinds of classrooms and kinds of places where people are sharing these stories with each other. When I interviewed um, I've interviewed so many different people and who've done really impressive things, but the most helpful stories of them are not the things that went well. I want to hear the things that went sideways, the fiascos, the thing that just where they really crashed, because then they're being really honest, they're being vulnerable, and that vulnerability makes me stronger. It helps everybody. And so it's changed the way I speak with children when I tell stories and when I write stories for children. It's changed the way I show up in rooms with adults. So it's like I want this to be a place where it's safe to share. It's safe to admit that you've messed up before, and you can help the whole room grow from it.
I love that. I love that. And you're talking about impressive things people have done. You're a New York Times bestseller, which is, I mean, that is impressive. What inspired you, like, to write the book, and what kind of started that journey for you?
Yeah, I was working on a completely different book, and I've been working on it for a really long time. And there's the image in my head of what my drawings are going to be. I'm an illustrator, and then there's what I can actually draw, and I screw up constantly. And hands are notoriously hard to draw for humans and AI. Even AI can't do it.
I
And
was I
I
was gonna
found
make an
myself
AI comment then, like, are you excited about that? And then, but that's interesting. Again,
yeah, like I get like this whole thing with hands. It's so hard. I started drawing characters with their hands in their pockets or behind them, but I was struggling and realizing I was getting so frustrated with myself. And at the same time, these failibration parties were growing and growing, and realizing that maybe kids also needed what I also need right now, which is to know that I am not a failure. I've failed
mm,
at drawing hands. I've experienced failure in pitching books that didn't work, pitching television shows that didn't fly, so many projects of mine that crashed and burned. And I took it on as my identity. I'm a failure. And
yep.
I remembered being a fourth grader and being in math and thinking I'm a failure because I can't do math. And that's just not true. Like failure is not your identity. It's just an experience. And so this desire of letting kids know that, and every adult, I wanted to create a book that does that. And I love picture books most of all because they're one of the only mediums we have that are enjoyed usually by an adult and a child at the same time because they're reading it. Sometimes a kid explores it and they have it themselves, but it's this really beautiful space where if you write something that resonates with a person who's 4 and who's in 4th grade and who's 94, then that's the challenge. I really like those things that are human. And so this book grew out of that desire to create something that spoke to every person.
Well, look, I feel like I'm just thinking experiences in my life where, like, I felt like a failure. I was told I was a failure. I told them I wasn't able to accomplish something, right? Or you tell yourself that a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Where So I know we're going to be wrapping up here. Where can people find out, number one, about a Failibration that's going on? Like, how do people get involved? And then where can people find more information about you and the book as well? Because I want to pick up an edition of the book too for my daughter and growing kids as well.
Yes, yes. So you can go to failibration.com where you can, sign up to host a party. We've got resources that are free for you can host a party for your company, for a classroom, for any age. We've got discussion guides, game activities, printables, and then we're going to be sharing lots of stories over the next few days and weeks of what it's growing from these, because we're seeing some really funny things, really beautiful things, hard things, but there's entire communities really coming together. And so failibration.com, and the book's available anywhere your favorite bookseller lives and shares books. The book's available, comes out September 10th. And we're excited that, as much as I don't want to be the failure guy, I do want to be a person who can create space where people feel freedom.
I
And
love that.
and I've loved being able to do that. And I'm really looking forward to being in places where we're with kids and people who care about kids and people who used to be kids, as we let them know you're not a failure,
I love that.
but
I love it.
it's an experience. So I hope you fail better. That's the idea.
I love it. I love it. Well, Evan White just posted a link as well. So MontagueWorkshop.com/Failibration. Well, Brad, it has been great to meet you. I'm inspired. I'm thinking about what you're doing. I'm going to get involved, and we appreciate your time on the show. It was so good to see you.
Of course, I'm so excited about all this whole community here. There's so many leaders, so many people making good things happen. Go
Let's
fail
go.
better.
Let's go. All right. Well, we're gonna move to the next segment here. We've got recruiting with Clark. Clark.
That was incredible. I love that intro. I'm pumped up. So good way to wrap up this week. I'm going to try to see if I could fail better today. That was an awesome segment. Today we're talking counteroffers, a hot topic. I think this really started coming to light a couple of years ago, right in the great recruiting rush of 2022. This was Joel's idea to talk about today, so I definitely want to get his thoughts. My thoughts are, the first step with how do you deal with counteroffers with candidates? The first thing I do is you want to be proactive, not reactive. What I mean by this, you from the very first call, especially if you're in an industry that candidates are in demand, right? There's not enough supply, a huge demand. I think construction, I think a lot of leaders in construction come to mind. Project managers is one that our firm has worked on this year. That was, I think every candidate dealt with a counteroffer in some way, shape, or form, or at least most of them. So in the first call, right, you want to build that trust, be open and communicating, right, the traditional recruiting best practices. You want to map out why a candidate would jump for this role, and then continue and dive deeper into that conversation, right? A lot of times that's where it stops when you're talking to a recruiter. But again, map it out. Like, what are the chances of a counteroffer? Have they given them to other, employees? Some candidates told us, no, they're already over budget, or like, I'm at the top of the range. I know for a fact that they aren't going to do a counteroffer. Some have been like, yep, they're most likely going to present a counteroffer because they're absolutely screwed if they don't have me on this project. And so that let us get ahead of the game and kind of build that transparency, get the candidate to start thinking about it early in the process, and it allowed us to communicate clearly with our client about kind of what to expect, because you want to really reverse engineer a completed search. And that starts in the beginning of the interaction, beginning of the process. So again, sometimes it works out for you, sometimes it doesn't. We had a candidate that was making 150, we got him a 170 job with 30% bonus. His company countered $250K base with 30% bonus. There's nothing that we could do, right? But then for the same role, we did the same thing. We got ahead of it, and we were able to actually beat a counter that was about 5 to 10 grand above the base and the package that we offer, just because we got ahead of the game and we're able to kind of really show, hey, this is a place that wants me versus my current employer is just being reactive. So that's kind of my thoughts. Be proactive versus reactive, right? Map it out with your candidate, and then sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But that's what I got. But Joel, I got to hear your thoughts, man.
I'm with you, man. When it comes to salary, when it comes to any of these conversations, early and often, You know, I was used to, you call it the pre-close, right, where you have that conversation with the candidate. Usually it's a little bit, near the end of the process, but you start mentioning it like, hey, what would you do if your company came back? They want to offer you more money. They want to offer you a promotion. What would you say? And you got to have, like you said, you got to confront it head on. I think we're seeing more of that right now because people really, really do know that, um, they know that it's a tough market out there. They know that there's not a lot of stability.
Yeah.
Construction, I think, is a little bit of a different beast because that's one of the markets that's pretty active. But we're seeing a lot of counteroffers right now from other industries. And if someone, it's like almost like the evil is better than evil that you don't know, right? Like, I'm gonna stick with my company. I think it's going to be more stable or potentially more stable. So I think if you're a recruiter, you got to anticipate it, and you're definitely doing yourself a disservice if you're not having a conversation, you're not pushing it, you're not bringing it up on calls regularly, and just getting comfortable having those conversations in general.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just really planting those seeds and kind of getting potentially those red flags and revealing those earlier. I think and having it out loud with you and the candidate is so important because, yeah, you might not address it on the first call, depending on kind of the industry that you're at, but kind of laying the framework to that. So you kind of really build the case in the heat of the moment when the offers are both on the table. Danielle, what's Gen Z? How does this Gen Z dealing with counter offers? What are you hearing? What's that perspective?
Yeah, I have like a crazy story about a friend of mine who
Yeah.
had a counter offer at a bank that I can't get into for legal reasons. I'm just kidding. No, but it was a crazy story. And I think ultimately, people have to look out for themselves and like think about what's best for them. And I'm, a big proponent of going back to, a company and considering a counter offer, but it's, at the end of the day, you're in the driving seat of your career. So you got to decide what's best for you.
Yeah. And one of the things I completely agree with, to the point of the crazy story that made me think of something is I tell especially agency recruiters, right? You're the matchmaker. Really put your emotions to the side the best you can and really be kind of a calming influence for both the candidate and the client. I think sometimes recruiters, we can get wrapped up in, oh, this is my fee on the line and everything else. It's like, put that aside and realize like you're dealing with someone like a huge transition in someone's life and obviously big hire for the company as well. So really trying to kind of dig and kind of really understand where someone's coming from, kind of in the heat of the moment where they're dealing with a few offers on the table, because it doesn't happen that often typically in someone's life, right? It's a big event. I always tell recruiters like this: be calm, right?
Yep.
You kind of seek to understand, and like you're gonna get there.
Yeah.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, guys, that is the segment. The recruiting with Clark segment right there. So tons of that is the only segment that matters right there. It probably is for some recruiters out there. But Clark, thank you so much. As always, you'll be on the show next week. We will all be here next week, except for me, because I won't be here next week. But I want to give a special shout out once again to ERIN, our sponsors. We could not do this show without you guys. So pick up your sloth. Comment right now if you want a sloth. We'll get it to you. And guys, remember to check out purpleacorn.io, and you can catch all the episodes of this show on Spotify and iTunes as well, wherever you go to listen to podcasts. Danielle, it's been an honor to have just me and you on the show. I kind of like it.
It's been fun.
We'll just get rid of Adam. We'll get rid of Adam. Adam, you're done. We'll send you your letter. What I did want to mention is stick around. We are not done. We actually have a brand new podcast right after this episode with Talent Collective, which I'm super excited about. The show is called Hire Her, which is amazing. So if you don't know Talent Collective, stick around, get to know Talent Collective. We will be airing it right after the show. And again, reminder, if you want more of Purple Acorn, go to purpleacorn.io. It's been a blast with you guys. It's been a long morning, a fun morning, as always. Thank you to everybody who joined the show today.
Thank you.
Let's stay demure. Demure. Did I say it right?
Guys. Bye.
All right. Bye, guys.